Today will be lesson 4 in instructional videos for Master Kuo Lien Ying's Northern Shaolin form, Cha Chuan. In this lesson, we'll learn 2 more moves, and with these 2 moves, we'll be completing the first section of the form. Again, I like to break up the form into different sections so that you can practice those sections independently and kind of really work on the moves with more precision rather than just kind of going from start to where you are every time. And then as we proceed through the form, you get to link those sections together and then do the whole form. Also, it's very important to actually go from the beginning to where we will be finishing because you also want to improve your endurance. And as you get further into the form, you'll find out that it's a fairly taxing form, and working on your endurance is as important as working on the specific movements. But before we begin, I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about the form itself. Master Guo learned this form when he was pretty young, I think like 12 or 13, from Master Lien in China. And so I like to always think of this beauty of this form going back to around 1907 and probably earlier, but that was when Sifu studied this form. And for me to link present day tradition going back to 1907 is something I really like to embrace. Also, I want to emphasize that one of the characteristics of this form is using loose explosive power for the strikes. It's not a hard power like a rigid, but it's using the kinetic power from the movement and the root into focusing like a cone right into the impact of the strike, whether it's hand or foot. And so even though in teaching it, I'm teaching you how to break down the movement and perform the sequence and ending strike. And it's okay to practice like that. Eventually, as I showed in that last lesson, you want to learn how to have that continuous flow so the strike goes from here in one continuous move rather than coming here, here, here. And the other reason I'm teaching this here is so that you get the right projection from underneath the shoulder into a straight line. But like I've talked about in my other videos, a lot of times your practice needs to start out like a block of granite, and then the practice like a river running over the rock and smoothing it out into a natural boulder by its own kind of just continuous practice forms that curvature. So the curvature shouldn't necessarily be force, but should just come from many, many years of practice. But I always show both the blocky angular rendition and then basically the way with flow. So it's important as you progress in your practice to always use the flow, and the explosive culmination of the strike comes from the root and the preceding movement. And you want to use those movements for the power. And again, you learn to be able to individualize those movements of the root and power, separate out of the movement as well, so that when you actually have to use the function, it doesn't have to rely upon the previous move. So these are just a few of the details, and then for the lesson today, I'll start off with a kind of a review of the movements that we learned up to this point. And for this review, I'm going to break it up into the lessons that I taught, and then you can go back if you have any questions on marching the movements. You can go back to that particular lesson. So in this review, I'm going to go through the movements and call them out, and I'll name the lessons that they come from. In lesson 1, we learned the opening salutation movements. Drop down, shoot out, sweep back, 1, 2, 3, stamp. Hands come forward, this, and then into the crane stance. Then from here, lesson 2, we learn into the hand on the hip and blade hand strike, and then the kick into the sit, sweep and punch with the right fist. Lesson 3, cross the hand, come up into the crane, pivot, drop down, and then kick and punch, and then blade hand strike with a skip step. So this is where we begin this lesson. So for the second demonstration, I'm going to do the movements more with flow without calling them out. And then also I'll indicate where this lesson begins in that turnaround, and then demonstrate the lesson that we're going to learn today. And then after that, we'll go actually into learning the moves. So the lesson will begin from this point. And we'll end the lesson in this position here with a sweep. So we'll take the lesson from that last blade hand strike, and the direction you're coming off the diagonal with this low hand sweep and the kick, and then the skip step. You're all on the diagonal line, and you're going to turn around 180 degrees and come back exactly on that diagonal line. And depending on the space that you have, you might want to adjust it a little bit straighter so that you have space for the next movements going into the 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock. So again, depending on the presentation and where you want to be on that, the next line of travel would be kind of from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So, okay, so from that last blade hand strike here, so what you're going to do is you're going to come from this left bow and arrow stance, and you're going to pivot back into a right bow and arrow stance. At the same time, the right hand that's in the blade hand strike is going to come down and sweep low like a block in a blocking action, sweeping action. At the same time, the left hand that's on the hip is going to come across here so that as you pivot, you're sweeping anything that's coming in as you do the turn. So again, from here, you're going to pivot and here, here, here. So you will end up over your right leg and in this low block position, and upper left hand kind of in front of the shoulder, or just to the right of your face. Fingers together. So from here, 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 here. So you see I'm pivoting on my heel. Here, here. Here, here. And then from here, you're going to sweep back with the left hand, much like we did in the opening salutation. And from here, the right hand is going to come up and strike. So from this position, the hand is going to strike at the same time that you come forward into the left cap stance. So from here, here, there's two actions. From the hand on the hip and the blade hand strike, pivot, and then sit into the cat as you do the left hand sweep and right blade hand strike. And you kind of move your balance forward so you're sitting on your right leg here. Okay. From the blade hand strike, turn with a double block, sweep, blade hand strike. Again, you're on that diagonal line. One more time. From this, blade hand strike comes off the skip step here, hold that, then turn, double block, and then blade hand strike as you sweep back. So let's take it from the last lesson that we learned, and then we'll do that all continuous. From the sit, cross hands, come up, pivot, low sweep, kick, punch, skip step, blade hand strike, turn back, and then sit, blade hand strike. Make sure your back is straight. Okay, we're going to the second move of this lesson. Neither one of these movements should be fairly physically hard for anybody. They're pretty easy to do, unlike the one where you had to drop way down on one leg into the drop stance. That's kind of physical difficulty. Here, you're just going to run into trying to remember the sequence and the movement, and then so it should be pretty easy to do. I'm going to point out a little thing about the kind of the flow as well, so that you can get the rhythm. But let's just learn the sequential movements first. And also in this series of movements, you're going to do from the blade hand strike, you're turning, now you're kind of like centered over your right leg, so you've already moved forward 3 feet. And then as you take that step forward, that adds another foot, so you're about 4 feet. And you're going to take 3 steps. And so you're covering probably about 10 feet in this line. And again, in just learning it, you don't need to be quite so conscious of where you're going to end up as you practice the movement. But if you're practicing in a specific space for demonstration, again, you have to know, like that sign, think ahead. You have to know where those movements are going to set you for the next series of movements. And for the next series of movements, you want to end up in about the 2/3 of the way furthest over to the end of the space, so that you have, because of the distance of the next series of movements and then having to come back all the way down. So I'll just be conscious of that. And again, in teaching the lesson, I'm trying to keep the movements in the center of the camera frame. And so you'll see me kind of moving around to adjust for the spatial quality of teaching the particular movements. So we ended up with the blade hand strike here, but I'm going to move a little bit further over because I want to demonstrate that in the center of the frame. So in a blade hand strike here, you're going to do the turn, stop, and then sit into the cat as you sweep. This left big hand should be about 45 degrees. Now, remember from the drop stance, that principle of taking that weight off and getting yourself to move forward for the 3 steps. Okay, we're going to use that in this movement as well. And again, in much of the learning, you're going to find these principles that I'm teaching of generating movement will be carried throughout learning the form. So it's an example of how the fundamental basics of Kung Fu run throughout all of Kung Fu. Okay. So again, from here, pivoting on the heel, and then into the cat. From here, if you lift up your foot, here, if you're in a proper cat stance, you should automatically be moving forward. If you don't, then you're sitting too far back. You want to have enough pressure on that foot that it automatically moves. So from here, we're going to go 1, 2, 3. Okay? It's like a running move. Here, I like this move. Here. As soon as you get to the third movement, ending on the left, you're going to stamp back. And then you're going to cross behind. So you notice that I went from here to here. Okay? So it's similar when we did the turn. Basically the same position. From the blade hand strike, turn. Notice this position here. Okay? Then the sweep. Then here, off balance run. 1, 2, 3. Then stamp. Step behind. Okay? And then we're going to be going in this direction. This is like a cross-legged sit here. So it's done in a kind of a running style. Okay? Again, you'll find with this particular style of Cha Chuan, there's a lot of movements that have this kind of little bit of a run in it. And then again, that changes the rhythm from kind of one movement to another, and then a run, and then a sweeping move. So from the blade hand strike, turn back, sit in the cat. 1, 2, 3, stamp, and cross here. From here, you're going to go with the sweep again into the beak hand, and you're going to sweep this foot out in a semicircle as you go forward with the blade hand strike. So again, this is a sweeping movement, sweeping somebody from behind their foot and pushing them back, ending with the weight on the left leg. From the blade hand strike, turn back, double block, sweep, sit in the cat, run, 1, 2, 3, stamp. So right here, when you get to this point, you kind of stop yourself and then kind of push yourself back as you stamp this foot, so that you kind of like going, and then you're going to be moving kind of backwards as you see that. So let me do a little bit with more flow so you'll be able to see that action. Turn, cat, 1, 2, 3. Put that into the sweep. Again, like my other presentations, just practice this position into that sweep over and over. On this hand, for balance, you can go straight forward and do the foot sweep. Then slowly, as you get the feeling, you can kind of throw it out here. That comes from like line 4. So one more time on the second movement. From the blade hand strike, turn around into the sit and blade hand strike. Then the run, 1, 2, 3, stamp, step back, do the sweep and the blade hand strike and the left hand sweep, all one motion. And you'll be facing at 12 o'clock. And that'll be the end of the first section. And then the next series will be going back and forth as well, but we'll leave that for the next lesson. Let's go over that step behind because it's probably the most unfamiliar move to most of the people trying to learn this form. It goes from here into the sit. So, 1, 2, 3, step behind. This is the kind of the important part, the kind of stepping back and then the cross-legged stance here, so that you could do the sweep out this way. So you're going on the 45 line, and then you're going to go on the 12 and 6 o'clock line. Again, here, 1, 2, 3, stamp. So as I step back, you see that my foot direction on the left foot is pretty much straight in this line as I'm doing the sit. And this one as I stamp down here, as I step back, this foot is going to be kind of turned here. So as I do the cross-legged, I'm kind of like the toe is pointed out here. Here. So you're doing 3 actions at once. The foot sweep and the hand sweep into the beak and then the strike. Again, in the beginning, from this stance here, I think it's going to be easier for you to do straight right hand and just have this foot going in the circle and this hand going in the circle rather than trying to do this as well. And then after a while, you learn how to use this torque of the foot going in the sweep to use that counter action with that. For those of you that have come up through Tan Tui, then you recognize this coming from line 4. In line 4, it's like a flat blade hand strike, and then thrust forward, and then step behind. And you see this stance here? Same as the stance that we're learning here. And then this is a grab, and then the foot sweep, and a push here. And this comes out of the 4th road in Tan Tui. So that movement coming out of the 4th line is the same one from here, except that you're just kind of changing a little bit with that beacon strike rather than grab into the fist retracting movement. Again, this is a kind of example of where the Tan Tui, the 10 roads, are the foundational movements for the Cha Chuan. And again, I always encourage people, even if you're learning this particular style of Cha Chuan through these lessons, to go back over the 10 road series and actually learn those, because these are the foundational movements. And then what I think I do is kind of go through the form as we've learned it so far and try to kind of show the similarities between the movement we're doing in this Cha Chuan set form and the 10 road movements, so you can kind of see the correlation. Again, here we're talking about the correlation between the 10 roads of Tan Tui and then the Cha Chuan form. And so let me demonstrate line 5, road 5 of Master Kuo Lien Ying's Tan Tui. And then I'm going to go back to the Cha Chuan that we're learning and point out a few moves and the similarity between those movements and line 5. And the Kung Fu principle incorporated in them as well. In line 5, it's a block and punch. Block down, kick, step forward, block, block and punch. So the principle that we're drawing out of this road 5 is in the very beginning, And if you go back to the lesson for this Tan Tui, I really talk about this a lot as well. Same principle that we've been talking about in Cha Chuan, using the rotational movement and the root for the power for either the blade hand strike or the punch. The kind of the root of the power is the same whether the strike ends in different elements. Okay, so in the very beginning of line 5, when you're doing the block and the punch here, so from here you're coming in through that under shoulder position into the punch, but you're going from up here into that, the same way that you're going from this position here. So again, the movements might look different, but the root and the power are the same. So from here is that stepping into the root and then the straight explosion into the ending strike. I don't know if you can see the similarities, but all the body work is exactly the same here. Also, off of the 5th road, you just remember the 5th road, here, block, just stepping into that punch. Again, the power, that punch is that step and that swing of the leg. See that? So I'm taking that kick, and sometimes the timing is going to be different, but I'm taking that power into that punch. In the same way, in the Cha Chuan, here, from that blade hand strike, we kick, and we're doing the same strike, but in a slightly different position. We're taking that same principle, and then here, even though I'm in a different foot, the power of that leg swing and step are the same elements that generate the power. So those are 2 examples of as we go through the lessons. And then line 2. In line 2 is where you get the punch and kick combination. So in line 2, 1, 2, punch and kick, come forward. Okay. And after the sweep down, do the punch and kick. I change it back to line 2, right? And so I do line 2 and incorporate that out of Cha Chuan. From that little demonstration, you can see how interchangeable the moves are between Tan Tui and Cha Chuan. So I'm using that same punch and kick combination and fundamentals from line 2 into that punch and kick combination on that line, right? On these turns here, much of the movements in both the Tan Tui and the Cha Chuan have this low and high block, okay? Like in line 3, the high and low block. And you'll find that in line 1 as well. So those are kind of some basic examples. And then of course, the one that we just moved, I show you here in here. And then in line 4, same position, and then same sweep and blade hand strike. So I thought that this kind of demonstration of the movements between the 10 roads in the Tan Tui and the movements in the Cha Chuan will help you to see the importance of the correlation between Tan Tui and Cha Chuan. And even though if you haven't studied the 10 roads, maybe you've done a different style, it's still important to go back and study the 10 roads because the 10 roads that Sifu taught are different than the 10 roads in other Cha Chuan systems. So they're kind of the root of this form here. And then as we go into a demonstration of the R-long, you'll see that, that those movements carry into the third form as well. Okay, that'll be the lesson for today. I hope that was kind of informative for you to see the relationship between the Tan Tui and the Cha Chuan. I really hadn't thought about it too much until I was trying to think about teaching the lesson. I thought that would be a good idea to present so you could see. And again, that little demonstration at the end where I went from line 5 into different movements. You can see how the two you can kind of link. And again, one of the things that when people were studying with Master Bowl and they practice the 10 roads, I don't think too many people practice changing the lines into different combination of lines. That was something that I came up with myself and found out it was actual practice that many people in many styles of Tan Tui and Cha Chuan do to do a variation of the 10 lines by incorporating going from line 3 to line 4, the next movement back to line 5, and kind of learning how to vary them. So you're again in learning the Kung Fu and the Da Lu, the fixed form, learning how to take the movements out of the fixed form as individual movements so that you can link them with other movements is all part of learning how to use them functionally as well. Okay, enjoy that. Thank you.